Thank you very, very much, Mr. President. I am conscious that we'll be returning to many of those themes in our questions. But before I ask the first question, I just wanted to give a brief rundown of how we decided on the questions. As you know, a call went out to anybody, faculty, students, staff, to put in a question that they would like to be considered. In all, we received 178 questions, which together represent a very thoughtful and challenging reflection upon the President's book and on the consequences of its publications. What I did was I took them and clustered them into about 12 sections dealing with different issues. Some of them had so many questions that I deemed they probably deserved a couple of questions on their own. And you're going to therefore be roughly hearing them in the order that they occurred in terms of the amount of questions that we got about particular issues. Deep apologies to those who did not get their questions accepted. But we do feel that this way you will at least have something the equivalent of your question asked for you, possibly by someone else. So we felt it was a good way of ensuring equity in terms of the issues that were thrown up. Now, to ensure that the debate does not start today, unfortunately we have the President for such a short time, and the organising committee, whom I'll introduce you to later on, have set up a blog and promised to tell me how to use it, which will be available to all to continue the discussion after this event. And what you will be particularly interested to hear, perhaps, is all 178 questions will be available on that blog. So you can at least see that your own question is there and was considered, and make up your own mind about how we chose the questions. Needless to say, President Carter has neither seen nor heard, nor indeed asked about any of the questions that have been selected. I just want to warn you, Mr. President, there are not too many, what they say in these premises, soft matzo balls coming your way today. Right, let us start, as our time is pretty short. One of the things that was very difficult was for people to appreciate some of the comparisons that you used. And to ask a question, I therefore asked Danielle Cohn, who's a junior here at Brandeis, who is a fine arts major. Danielle.
In an interview on Hardball with Chris Matthews this past November, you compared Palestinian oppression to the situation in Rwanda. Could you both clarify this remark and justify comparing political oppression of an anti-governmental group to an all-out genocide?
Well, Chris was not there, and his substitute was fumbling around with the present times. I think he got Darfur mixed up with Rwanda. And my question, if you look at the exact transcript, was, are you talking about today, the persecution today? And my answer was, at the current time, there's no substantial persecution in Rwanda. I'm quite familiar with that area of the world. So today, obviously, the Palestinians have a worse time than the Rwandans do. But in history, one of the worst examples, second only in my memory to the Holocaust in Germany, was the execution over just a 48-hour period of 500,000 Rwandans. So there's no comparison between what happened in Rwanda, I think in 1993, and what is happening in Israel with the Palestinians now. That would be a ridiculous comparison. But he was talking about today. He was confused. Chris Matthews, as I said once more, was not there.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
The next question concerns something you've spoken to us about already, which has been quite challenging for many people, and that's the term apartheid. Yes, and I think that this is concerned not with its use, but with its consequences, and I'd like to ask Ron Kendler, who's a sophomore with a double major in politics, international and global studies. Ron.
President Carter, I'd just like to start off by saying that I agree with some of your assertions that the media and polity in the United States is biased in favor of Israel, and some of Israel's behavior has been harsh and unjust. But I also wanted to ask you, in regards to your quote and your stated aim with this book, to, quote, help bring a lasting peace to the Middle East, do you, as a noted mediator and man of peace, think that the controversy surrounding the use of a divisive term like apartheid, as well as the interpretation of many of your claims, which have been seen as one-sidedly blaming Israel, could in fact be counterproductive and in the long term take us farther away from that goal of a lasting peace?
Yes, I can certainly see that that is a possibility. And that's a judgment that I made myself, no one else. When I proposed this title, by the way, the title doesn't have any punctuation in it. We intended to be Palestinian peace, not apartheid, but erroneously people have put a colon there. But anyhow, I can see, and then and now, that it could precipitate some hard feelings or some obstacles that might prevent the negotiation of a peace agreement and equity or fairness of treatment for the Palestinians. My bottom line was there has been no peace efforts at that time for 5 years. And the Palestinians are horribly treated. And their treatment is not known at all, or minimally, in this country. So I chose that title knowing that it would be provocative. But I think in the long run, it has precipitated at least discussion. There has been a lot of positive discussion. And I believe that it's brought the issue of a lack of progress on peace for Israel and a lack of progress on the end of the Palestinian suffering to the forefront of the American consciousness, much more than it was had the book not been written. I am deeply concerned about the tensions that might have arisen. That was not my intention at all. And I've been hurt, and so has my family, by some of the reaction. You know, I've been through political campaigns for state senate and for governor and for president, and I've been stigmatized and condemned by my political opponents and their supporters. But this is the first time that I've ever been called a liar and a bigot and an anti-Semite and a coward and a plagiarist. This has hurt me. I can take it. But I think that group of people who have made those statements, sometimes in full-page ads in the New York Times, I think they're an extreme minority. And I'm not complaining. You know, I'm willing to face the accusations. I think that, for instance, this weekend I was with Justice Stephen Breyer, who spent the weekend with me and my wife and others. I was with Stu Eisenstadt, one of the directors of Brandeis. I was with Rick Hertzberg, who was my speechwriter in the White House, and others. I don't think any of them would agree with any of those personal epithets. And the fact that the debate has deteriorated into ad hominem attacks on my character, I think has probably been a greater obstacle to progress than the fact that I chose a particular word in the title.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. One of the things that we study in our Masters in Conflict and Coexistence is the difference and the legitimacy of being an advocate and being a broker. And both actually have consequences attached to them, which can, of course, be positive or negative. The difficulty is it can be difficult to do both together in a particular situation. So thank you on that. A particularly controversial point, and if I say page 213, you will know exactly what I am going to throw at you, was what you said on 2 and 3 about when suicide bombing should end. Adam Schwartzbaum, who's a senior in politics and English, and the former vice president of the Brandeis Democrats, you'll be glad to hear, is going to ask this question. Adam.
Hello, Mr. Carter.
Hi, David.
On page 213 of your book, you write, "It is imperative that the general Arab community and all significant Palestinian groups make it clear that they will end the suicide bombings and other acts of terrorism when international law and the ultimate goals of the roadmap for peace are accepted by Israel. By making the cessation of terrorism by Palestinian groups conditional on Israeli acceptance of the ultimate goals of the roadmap and international law, are you justifying the use of suicide terror as a political tool?
The answer is absolutely not. That sentence was worded in a completely improper and stupid way, for which I have apologized to many audiences. And I have written my publishers to change that sentence immediately. And future editions of the book, if they are published, will include that change. So I apologize to you personally, to everyone here, and to everyone who might be listening to this, this telecast. I might also say that throughout the rest of the book, I'm sure you would agree if you've read the book, repeatedly I call on all Palestinians and Israelis to terminate the use of violence, and particularly against innocent civilians, or those who are not in uniform. So again, let me repeat, I apologize for that wording of that sentence. It was a mistake on my part, and it is now being corrected in future editions.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm going to take the next two questions together. I was very conscious reading through the questions how much came across of people's sense of insecurity and despair and anger about how Israel was supposed to defend itself, and the feeling that perhaps you had moved too quickly beyond that particular need. And I'd ask, therefore, Ido Given, who is a senior in politics, and Gideon Catch, who's a sophomore, to ask the next two questions, and if you consider them both together.
I'll do it.
President Carter,
Yes, Gideon.
during my service in the Israeli Defense Force, I spent time guarding roadblocks and checkpoints and was exposed to Palestinian suffering. Nevertheless, I never opposed Israel's policy in the territories because I understood how vital this policy is to Israel's security. In your book, you criticize Israel's policy in the territories. How can you justify this criticism in light of Israel's crucial and delicate security needs?
Thank you. And Gideon?
President Carter, in 2002, the year Israel began construction on its security fence, there were 234 casualties from Palestinian suicide bombings. Last year, there were only 2 bombings and 11 related deaths, a 95% drop. How can you say that Israel has no right to have its security fence when it has proven such an effective tool for stopping terrorists and protecting Israeli citizens?
Thank you. I'll try to combine my answers. First of all, I don't think anyone has been a stronger proponent of ensuring that Israel had adequate capability of defending itself. When I was president, Israel never lacked of any military or political support from my administration, and I've supported all of that assistance to Israel since then. We feel, as a nation, I felt as a president, that we were allies with Israel, and that Israel's security was vital to me. However, I spent 13 days at Camp David and then another 6 months with Egypt, negotiating with Menachem Begin, who was a very conservative Likud leader, as you know. And Begin himself agreed and signed officially a document that called for Israel to grant the Palestinians full autonomy, that is, control over their own affairs, and also agreed to withdraw both military and political forces from the occupied territories, from the West Bank and Gaza, which he called Judea and Samaria. So he submitted this controversial proposal to the Israeli Knesset to withdraw from the occupied territories.